I'll be reading today in Matthew 25, beginning in verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked and clothed me, I was sick, and ye visited me. And I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw thee hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we the stranger, and took in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw thee was sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily, I say unto you, insomuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done unto me. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into the everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungered, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked and clothed me not. Sick in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw thee and hungered and thirst, the stranger, and naked and sick, in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did not to the one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into everlasting life eternal.
As always, it's good to assemble with you. Especially good to see all of you this morning. Last week, we had a lot of you that were missing. Many of you were sick, and some of you were out of town on vacation, and some of you were on vacation sick. And so we had a large number of folks who were out, and so we're glad to see most of you back, and those who are not back are improving, and we're glad to have that good news. That's certainly an answer to prayers. We spent several weeks looking at stewardship, emphasizing how important it is for us to always be conscious that we have been entrusted with God's blessings, with God's instructions, with all of God's promises. And as Paul said to the Corinthian Christians in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 2, in reference to our stewardship, that it is required, first of all, of a steward that a man be found faithful. And that is, he takes those things that have been entrusted to him and he utilizes them the way they were intended to be utilized. And we're certainly going to give account for that. We made sure that we went through a number of the parables because it's talking about stewardship. And particularly in those last few parables we looked at, it's in the last week of Jesus' life here on this earth. And what a week it was. He was busy from, we would say, from daylight to dawn. He spent all of his day preparing for or preparing his disciples for his crucifixion. And so when you think about that, these specific emphasis about the kind of stewards they were to be becomes really, really important. In chapter 24 of the book of Matthew, as he's sitting on that mountainside on Mount Olivet, and he's there with his disciples, and the hustle and bustle of daily life is going on before him. And he tries to prepare them for what's about to happen. And he tells them, as he looks at the city of Jerusalem and the temple area, there will not be one stone left upon another. And then he talked about the final day. So his disciples talked to him privately and said, Lord, when are all these things going to happen, and when is that day, the day of the Lord? When is that final day? And so he separates out in Matthew chapter 24 the answer to that question. Of that time that was coming for the destruction of Jerusalem, he gave them some signs that they could be prepared, because when this destruction of Jerusalem occurred, they were going to close the gates and slaughter the people. And so if you paid attention, you could escape. If you didn't pay attention, then you're going to be trapped in that city. But then he turns attention to the final day. We'll sing about that final day in our invitation song, being prepared to meet God. But he said to them in reference to that, of that day and hour knoweth no man, not even the angels of heaven, the Father only. But then he gives them some parables of preparation for that day. We looked at those together, the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 of them were wise and 5 of them were foolish. We talked about the parable of the talents, and that these servants were given different talents or different amounts of money, and they were entrusted with that. They were to be stewards of that. And in all these last few parables, what he's emphasizing wasn't that these people did something wrong. They weren't committing adultery, and they weren't stealing in the sense that they would have violated the Old Testament law in that sense, but it's what they did not do. The 5 foolish virgins did not prepare. They were not ready. So as he's talking to his disciples and life's going on, he puts them in a context of saying, just like in the days of Noah, when the day of the Lord comes, the final day comes, there are going to be weddings going on. There's going to be funerals being conducted. There's going to be folks planning for dinner guests. There's going to be all kinds of activities. They're going to be marrying and giving in marriage, and they're not going to know until the Lord comes that it's too late. They didn't know in Noah's day. They had weddings scheduled. They no doubt had funerals that they attended. They had activities that were going on. And so as they're sitting there looking at all the activities that are going on in that area of Jerusalem, he said that's the way it's going to be in that final day. So how do you prepare for that? He tried to give them some insight. You have to, as good stewards, be prepared all the time. As Brother Pete read for us in this final parable, you might refer to it as the parable of the sheep and goats. But everything he said in all the parables, you remember, he said, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto. He's saying, pay attention. Now, the kingdom of heaven is like this. And he gave different illustrations. And now this preparation for those in the kingdom, they ought to be enlightened concerning these matters. But then he turns his attention to what was read for us. The Lord will come. And when the Lord does come with his holy angels with him, he's going to gather all nations before him, so nobody's going to be left out. But just like he's illustrating these other parables, they're going to be busy going about daily life. So how do you prepare? He has 2 different distinct attitudes and dispositions that are on display here. Because you see all of chapter 24 and now these parables in Matthew 25 were to create in their minds this consciousness, this awareness, this unforgettable reality that judgment is certain. Now, he didn't intend for us to walk around quaking and in our boots about, well, what's going to happen when the Lord comes. He told us what's going to happen when the Lord comes. And that's something for us to quake about. And you have those that are collected on the Lord's right hand that's described as those like the shepherd's sheep. He immediately says, "Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the earth." It's a celebratory time. Nothing to dread there. But what he illustrates to us and what brings all the stewardship emphasis to a climactic conclusion is that this is who they are. He said, "I was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came unto me." They immediately responded by saying, "Lord, when did we see you in those conditions and do those things to you?" And he said, "When you did it unto the least one of these, you did it unto me." You remember, you do remember, because I heard your voices when you expressed it. Brother Steve led us in 572. And those verses emphasize something for Jesus. You know what this parable of the sheep and goats is all about? Something for Jesus. That by doing those things that Jesus did while he was on this earth, and carrying out the kindness that Jesus would carry out if he was still on this earth, by being who Jesus was, because we have been entrusted with this responsibility and this privilege. The second stanza of that song said, "Give me a faithful heart, likeness to thee." You see, we want to be like Jesus. What's he saying to these folks? You did these things to me, for me. And they're just going about doing kind things. And the rest of that verse says that each departing day henceforth may see some work of love begun, some deed of kindness done, some wanderer sought and won, something for thee. Every day. In other words, he's saying that's who these people are. It wasn't just something they did and said, okay, what good deed can I do today? All right, I need to do something kind because I know the judgment coming and I know what the parable said, and they're just going about their life. This is who they are. And when they're doing these things, Jesus is conscious of them. They've been entrusted with those opportunities. Like Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10 says, "As you therefore have opportunity, do good unto all men, and especially unto the household of faith." There it is. As we have opportunity. Well, when do we have opportunity? Well, all the time. But if we're just worried about, well, how much do I have to do? And some of these parables specifically pointed that out, like the parable of the 5 virgins. These weren't bad people. They weren't stealing from folks, and they weren't dishonest people, but they just did what they thought was just enough to get by. And they were not prepared. And then they wanted to borrow from those virgins who had extra oil and said, "Let me borrow yours." And can't do that. We're waiting for the bridegroom and can't do that, or we might not have enough. You see, while we have time and opportunity, we are to prepare, and that's what that was all about. Chapter 24 was emphasizing that judgment's certain, and they are to be alert, and they are to make sure they straighten out their lives today while they have opportunity, because that time is coming when you're not going to be prepared, and he's going to come as a thief in the night, and so preparation is now. And then he gave us some illustrations. Do all you can while you can. Like those 10 virgins. You want to make sure that you do preparation while you have opportunity. These folks are not saying, how do we prepare for the Lord's coming? How do we prepare for the Lord's coming? They were just like Jesus in their daily lives. And they were prepared for the Lord's coming. And as soon as he speaks to them, the servants, these selfless servants, these stewards of the opportunities God had blessed them with those who recognized his likeness in their lives, to be kind like he was kind and do those things that he would do, they were rewarded. That's what stewardship's all about. Taking that which we've been given and entrusted with and using it the way it was intended to be used. Those are the things that we are to be conscious of and not forget. All these daily activities, and there are always going to be folks who are described here in this particular parable in our lives. Hungry people, thirsty people, strangers, naked people, sick people, people who are in prison. That doesn't mean that you have to or I have to all be involved in a prison ministry. It's just saying, look, there are endless opportunities to represent the Lord. Now, you have all nations gathered before him, and so you have all kinds of people who have lived their lives, and some of them were busy taking care of different aspects of different people's lives, and depending on where we live geographically and depending on our economy where we are, or depending on the population of people, then the needs might be different. If you live in an area where there's a lot of industry and a lot of young families, there may not be a lot of need, a lot of hunger, those kind of things. You live in an area where there is poverty, then there'd be lots of opportunities. Every community would have some of that, but some more than others. And so in congregations, our ministries, our opportunities might vary and change from place to place. So he's not just selecting folks and saying, here's somebody that did all these things all the time. But among all those who were gathered on that day, they represented people who use their stewardship wisely. And his lips spoke blessings of eternal reward. Inherit the kingdom prepared from you from the foundation of the earth. That's who it was prepared for. Faithful stewards of God's blessings. Am I a faithful steward of the blessing God's given me? Judgment's sure. I'm not going to escape it. I don't need to live in dread of it, but I need to understand the reality of it. It's coming. Now, so do I spend my time here wisely, and I'm not just getting by, but I'm prepared to serve him no matter what happens. And understanding that all of us have different abilities and blessed with different things, but we all are blessed. Am I using what he blessed me with? Do I make excuses and say, well, I didn't have a really good family, or I didn't have a good father, my mother wasn't supportive, and my spouse doesn't encourage me, and I've never really found a congregation that recognizes my talent and would use me, and I can make these long lists of excuses like that one talent man did in Matthew 25. But the Lord didn't listen to the excuse, did he? If there are things that we're lacking, why didn't we ask for help? Why didn't we take what God blessed us with and let somebody else help us invest that? He took that excuse away, and so it wasn't a matter of what these people did that they were condemned by, it's what they didn't do. So stewards can't just say, I'm holding on to what he gave me. Stewards are entrusted with blessings so they can use them and bless other people with them. That's what it's about. But the rest of what Brother Pete read for us, those on the left side that he referred to as like the shepherd would put the goats on his left. So the emphasis is not right and left here. The emphasis is some were prepared and some weren't. Some had utilized their time and their energy and their blessings some had not. And it's a lot shorter little context, isn't it? We've mentioned this multiple times, but he begins by calling them accursed. Much like the one-talent man received it. Take this slothful and cursed servant and cast him out. Take what he had and give it to somebody that's going to use it. Well, this is a final scene. This is not, you get tomorrow to correct these things. This is today. This is the final day. This is it. Everybody's been gathered in this scene. There won't be a tomorrow. There won't be a correction, an opportunity to correct things. Everything's been assessed. Our stewardship been called into question. And these on his left hand are being cast into a place it wasn't prepared for them. It was prepared for the devil and his angels. Not a pleasant topic to talk about, is it? But they're going to be cast in this everlasting fire. This is not a temporary place. It's going to last forever. Not a pleasant place. Not a rewarding place. And when he describes, look, I was hungry, you didn't feed me. I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. I was a stranger, you didn't take me in. I was naked, you didn't clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you never bothered to visit me. Their response was, Lord, when did we see you in those conditions? It appears to be that they would have said, if they'd known it was the Lord, they would have responded to that. Now notice the difference. People who are like Jesus and those who recognize the blessing Jesus has bestowed upon them, they go around every day trying to be like Jesus and doing those kind things that Jesus would do, and they live and embody the song that we express together, something for thee. Since I've been blessed by the Lord himself, I want to be a blessing for the Lord. It's a natural thing. It's a daily thing. It's who they were. But it's also true of those on his left hand. Oh, they might change. If they'd known this was the last day, and they knew the Lord was going to call them into question, well, I need to go look for opportunities. There was no more opportunities. He said, you didn't do it. You were entrusted with it. You were stewards of your own life, your own opportunities. Didn't utilize it. Now again, this is quite a contrast, isn't it, in these two? And in the final analysis, he answered, saying, verily I say unto you, as much as you did it not unto the least of one of these, you did it not unto me. There are a lot of, we would say, good people. Good in the sense that they would really never deliberately, consciously, purposely do any harm to anybody. And they would never consciously, willingly, purposely take something that they thought belonged to someone else. But some of those same people have never ever been conscious to the degree they should have, could have, that everything they have is just something they're stewards of, that the Lord has blessed them with, and they were intended to use it for his glory. Never crosses their mind. Not because they're bad people, but they just hadn't prioritized saying, what a blessing. Now I want to be a blessing. I want other people to see Jesus through me. To me to extend his blessings. Not taking credit for myself, but providing for them like I know he would provide if those same opportunities were his. Because the examples are innumerable in the short period of time he was here on this earth. So whatever period of time here, I want to make sure I do that. The final verse Pete read for us was, those shall go away into everlasting punishment. Talking about the ones on the left. The ones who didn't practice good stewardship. Now see, this is the finale. This is the summation. This is it. All of us called into account. No reason to dread. No reason to dread if you're using what the Lord blessed you with. In fact, the very first words are going to come out of his mouth. He's illustrated, "Come, ye blessed of my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you." Preparation being made for you. He's not watching and saying, now, just as soon as they step out of line, that's it for them. No, he's preparing for us. But he wants us, while we're here, to use what he's blessed us with. Be conscious every day of doing that. When we get up, the very first thing in the morning is to thank him for the blessings he bestowed on us and say, how can I be useful in blessing others today? Make sure that how I speak to people, how I treat people, what I go about doing, I have a purpose behind it. So I don't get there on a day and say, well, if I'd known the Lord needed it, I'd taken a day off. I would have gotten money out of the bank and given it to him. You see, we live as if every single person we meet gives us an opportunity to do that. The song, Something for Jesus, said that. That we would be conscious what we're doing is for the Lord. When you put all that together, and all of it is together, in Matthew 24, verse 1, to Matthew chapter 25 and verse 46, he's trying to prepare them. The judgment's real. It's coming. Be alert. Straighten things out today while you have time and opportunity. Do all you can while you can. Do all you can with what you've been given. And serve all you can for the least in the kingdom, as if you were doing it for the Lord. I want to tell you what I do for my own physical protection of myself and my family. I lock doors. I set security alarms. I have smoke detectors. Any of those ring a bell to us? Why do we lock the doors? The Lord said, in the midst of all that, you don't know when the thief might come. If you knew when the thief come, you'd stay up and wait on him, wouldn't you? You'd be prepared for him. So what do we do in the meantime? We make preparations. So, well, he said on that day, the final day, the Lord's going to come as a thief in the night. What should we do? If I go to all that effort to protect my own physical well-being and protect my wife and my children and any guest I would have in my house, if I'm conscious of making sure they're physically protected, they're emotionally protected, and they can go to bed and feel safe, am I as diligent a steward of the security of my soul as I am of my physical well-being? That's what this parable of the sheep and goats is about. Yes, they were caring for people's physical well-being with the consciousness of the spiritual application for them as stewards. There's an eternal place waiting for those who serve the Lord here, who are part of His ministry here on this earth. Because you see, when His disciples were jockeying for position and trying to be first in His physical kingdom as they thought it would come, He had to sort all those things out, and He summed it up this way in Matthew chapter 20 and verse 28. The Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and give Himself as a ransom. So if that's what He came for, and if we're now stewards of it, what is it that I'm doing with my opportunities? To vouchsafe, to secure my eternal well-being by being faithful as a steward of the opportunities He's blessed me with. When He does come with His holy angels and He gathers all nations before Him, I'll be present. I'll either be on His right hand or on His left. My life will be summed up as to how I lived it. If I've learned from the words of my Lord's lips, it'll be a natural thing for me to have lived my life to honor and glorify Him. Not so I can say, I bet He's impressed with that. Oh, I did a good deed today. But to say, I belong to the Lord. And I'm going to live like the Lord. I'm going to be like the Apostle Paul, and I'm going to be crucified with Christ, and nevertheless do I live. But Christ liveth in me. And the life that I now live, I want to live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. He gave Himself for all of us. Are you willing to give yourself to Him? Because you believe He is the Son of God, that you're willing to turn away from your sins in repentance? Are you willing with your own lips to acknowledge before those who are simple that you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God? Are you willing to submit your life to Him in baptism, understanding what that means? You've been entrusted with an opportunity to be a child of God. And when you're buried with Him in baptism, you know that you're going to arise to walk in newness of life. Once being the servants of sin, but now being the servant of righteousness. Did you notice what He said in the parable? And then the righteous said unto Him, Lord, when did we see You hungry? Righteous? Those living right, the way He prescribed for them to, they've been entrusted with. If you have done that, and maybe sometimes in the parables that were explained to us, we get busy or distracted, or we just do just enough. How much do I have to do? If we ever get to that mindset, then we need to go back and read this again and recognize it's not about just how much do I have to do, but more importantly, who am I? Once we get the who am I correct, we're going to do the right things. And then we're going to get to hear Him say, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the earth. Don't you want to hear that? If we can assist and help you prepare for that, you let us know while we stand and while we sing.